guys, so today we start some new projects on the boat. We're continuing on with the refit of Sophisticated Lady, doing some more of the simple projects, not always just the big stuff, but even this week we're going to be doing some little things, replacing some, non-necessity items, but things that are convenient and nice to have on board, like the barbecue and things like that, We've had some really good luck with the products we've been using in the past, and I've got some good ideas about what we're going to replace it with coming forward. And you're seeing, this is my good buddy 40 here.
Hi.
40 range from Grenada. I met him a few years ago, and he's been hanging out on and off ever since. Been on the boat many times, and he's coming with me. We're going to go do some shopping today, pick up some new products that we need for some of the projects we're working on.
I'm a budget girl.
There you go.
Are you shopping?
Yeah, how you doing? All right. So one of the most important things on the boat that most people overlook and you don't even think about because it's just always there, it's invisible, you never have to really pay attention to it until it stops working, but the bilge pumps. We've got 2 bilge pumps on Sophisticated Lady, and they're both several years old, and they've done a really great job, but now it's time to replace them because you don't want to take chances. We're going to be doing a lot of offshore sailing again coming up. And the last thing you want to be worried about is whether your bilge pump's going to work if you start taking on water, which, hey, it does happen sometimes. You never know what or if something's going to give out, but you have to be ready for it. So we've got a couple of different pumps. We've got a submersible like this on board right now that's automatic switching. The problem I found with these pumps, we've got a very shallow bilge. It's only, it only holds about a cubic foot of water. And these pumps, they have to, of course, pump water out of the boat across about a 30-foot line, including about 4 feet of elevation. So what happens is the pump evacuates the water from the bilge, but the water always comes back down through. And I've even got one-way valves on there to prevent it from leaking back down, but over time the water from the hose always ends up leaking back down through the bilge. And the problem with these automatic switches that are built into the pumps, when you got a shallow sump like mine, the water will always come back up across the top of the pump. And that means the pump's going to turn on again, pump the water out into the hose, shut off, all the water's going to drain back down, it's going to set off the switch again, and it's just going to go into a cycle. Every 5-10 minutes it just keeps going on, off, pumping the same water up into the hose and leaking back down into the bilge. So it was a convenient system. I thought it'd be great, but I'm going to downsize from something there. I'm going to go back to a manual pump like this one here. And we're just going to take something like this. It's still 900 gallons per hour, lots of capacity. Comes with all the different fittings we need because we need one that goes straight up in the air. And this pump is going to be mechanically activated outside of the pump. So I'm not even going to put a mechanical switch on, but we're going to go with something electronic still. Let's see, like these ones here, these water witch. These are good switches. I've used in a couple different applications, and they've worked really well. And what we're going to do is raise this a little bit higher in the bilge so that it's not sitting right down at the base of the pump where the first amount of water comes up. It'll be sitting about 6 to 8 inches off the bottom. And that means that the water has to come up, definitely has to be leaking in, and it will hit the switch, the pump will evacuate it all out. And then even if the water does come back down through the pump and fills up another 3-4 inches sitting in the bottom of the bilge, it's not going to activate the switch at that point. So big improvement, stops the cycling of the pump all the time, so you're not just going to have this pump constantly going on and off all the time when it doesn't need to be, which of course just wears it out, and it uses electricity, because there's one thing that takes power is to pump water. It draws a lot of power. So we're going to look at one of those for our secondary service one. That's the one that's just for small amounts of water coming in. It's a maintenance pump basically. And then we're going to look at something in the larger capacities, like you see this guy here. That's what's going to replace our primary. And this is one, of course, on a mechanical pump, and this is the one that has the bilge alarm hooked up to it with a switch like this, so that if the water level rises above the level of the primary pump, this one will immediately start a screaming alarm and let you know that you've got a problem, and it will start evacuating at a very high capacity, because if the water's reached that level, they're assuming there's something going on. And another thing that's not an absolute necessity on most boats maybe, but on mine, it's a mainstay. We use this all the time. You can see we got the propane stoves and ovens and everything we've got on board, but we've also got this barbecue, and this is the one I've been using exactly right here. And it's one of the Magma series, and I think it's called the Catalina is the size of it. I've had this barbecue for 7 years, and I gotta say I've been very happy with it, and that's why I'm going to buy exactly the same barbecue. You get a product that works good for you, why change? I've had the barbecue for 7 years. I've not had to change anything except burners, general maintenance, clean it out once in a while. It's got the same mount on it you see here as what's on the boat already, so I don't have to change anything. We just unbolt one, put in the new one. The case on the old one is still in really good shape. It's only the inside that starts to deteriorate over time, of course, from all the heat and flames and corrosion. I've had mine covered. You see on the boat I've got a black cover on it which keeps it out of the sun and saltwater splashes, and I'm sure that's helped it last so long. These aren't a cheap option. You can see here it's $575 US, so that's an expensive barbecue, but when you amortize that over how many years I've been using the barbecue, I've had the barbecue, say, well, yeah, 6-7 years at least, so it's less than $100 per year. But once every 2 years, I put a new burner in it. And all the accessories are here. That's the burner right there, actually. And the burner is $36. So you're not looking at a lot of expensive maintenance with the barbecue. Just change the burner out once in a while. But yeah, some of the mounts in the bottom of it, they've corroded over time and let go. So some of the insides of mine is what's given away. So that's why it's time to replace. If it was just a matter of the outside casing, it's still fine. But everything inside is what's deteriorated just from the heat. And the last thing we had, of course, was we ran out of propane with our big tank one time, and I went to screw on one of the small tanks. And when I did, this is the little adapter, and I busted the fitting off right here. And it's no fault of the barbecue. I was twisting on it. No, right here, actually. That fitting just broke off. So instead of replacing this fitting, I mean, the fitting is only about $50. But again, it's a 7-year-old barbecue, so how much money do I want to put into it? I got to put another burner and everything. I could easily be looking at $150, $200 in parts, or buy a new one and start fresh with another 7 years for our next travels. So that is what we'll be doing. This is something I can't emphasize enough. If you're going to get into cruising on a sailboat or living on any kind of boat or anything like that, I mean, unless you're going to run a generator 24 hours a day where it doesn't matter and you don't care about how much power you use, lights and fans, anything that consumes electricity that you use on a daily basis, you need to factor in and consider. When I bought my boat, it came full of lights like this. They're all incandescents, halogen lights, you know, just regular type bulbs. And they've come out with some new lighting that is so much more advanced and so much more efficient nowadays. You come over here and you see now we're into LED replacements. You can get these little LEDs that will replace all the incandescents, and they'll fit the same size mounts. They make LEDs to replace every single mount you could ever have on a boat. You just look for them. And that's like we have in all of our overhead lighting, the switch-on lights, the turnaround lights, reading lights, everything. Yeah, your average halogen light always draws between 10 to 12 watts of power, and that's 1 to 1.2 amps at 12 volts DC. That means if you've got a lot of lamps running at the same time, you're going to be drawing a lot of power. And even in our main salon, just the overhead lighting, we have six of the halogen lights in the ceiling, and you turn those on, and I've got my little amp meter in the side of the boat there, and it tells me how much current everything draws, and those lights alone draw just under 8 amps of current. You use those even for 3-4 hours a night, and you're talking 30-40 amp hours of current, and that is a lot of power to be consuming just for one cabin. So we've adapted them all. We picked up new lighting now, and these LED lights, they will drop the 1 amp of current required by the halogen lights. These ones will draw 0.1 of an amp, literally 0.1 of an amp. It's 15 watts. Now they've even got ones here. We've been buying these ones. These are the replica of a 15-watt light bulb, but they only draw 2.1 watts of power. So that's 0.2 amps at 12 volts DC. They have the new versions now that are 30 watts of light. So they give you double the brightness at 2.2 watts of power. They only use 0.1 more watt. And that translates still to 0.2 of an amp. So 5 of these together will draw 1 amp hour of current, 1 amp of current at 12 volts DC. So we replaced all the ones in the cabin, and now I've got all 6 lights running with great LED lights that have much longer lifespan than the halogens and draw much less power. Now we're only drawing less than 1.5 amps for all 6 lights. It's a phenomenal difference, and it makes a huge difference once you change all the lights over in the cabins as well. That's something I've taken about 2 to 3 years we've been working on. It was difficult to afford to do at start because every one of these lights, they were about $50, $60 a couple years ago, each one. So there's only so many you can buy at once, and we've got a good 30, 40 light bulbs on the boat. So we just replaced them a few at a time. I put in 10 the first year, and then now these are much more affordable. Now you can buy them for $18 to $25 a piece on average, and that makes them a lot more affordable. outfit your cruising boat, cut your power consumption down, and that translates to less power required. So either you don't need as much solar panels or wind generator power, or you don't need to run your generator or your engine nearly as much to compensate for the power. So big difference. Definitely worth checking out LEDs. And the other thing, of course, that we use, especially life in the tropics, is fans. And there's a big difference in fans. I've been through a lot of these fans, and I can tell you there's a big significant difference in the amount of power that they use, the amount of air that they move, and the amount of wear and tear on them, like to how long they will actually last. I've used a lot of these on the boat because this is what the boat came with, the Caframo Ultima. Every single room on the boat was outfitted with these fans, and they last a good amount of time. They're pretty reliable actually, and they're inexpensive. That's one of the main advantages. You can buy these for anywhere from $50 to $70 depending on where you're buying them. They do make more noise because these are a brush motor, so there is surface contact areas inside, and when the fan's spinning you will hear that. It makes a little bit more noise through the boat. They also move more air, so of course you've got a little bit more just air movement noise, which, you know, that translates to more air movement, which is cooler breeze, so usually that's not the biggest problem. These don't last quite as long as most of them because of the brushes. The brushes eventually will wear out. As the longer the fan keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, you use them every single day, all night long, everything, the brushes will wear out eventually and the motor will just seize, and then it's time to throw it away and put in a new one. I've tried some of the other ones as well. Like I've used the Boras, the Caframo Bora. This is a really nice one. The Hella Jets, they've got some of these as well, and these are both brushless motors. So the difference here is they don't have contact points at the electrical connections for the engine or for the motors in the fans. That means that they're much quieter. They're also a little smaller. They don't blow as much air as something like the Ultimate. They're more expensive as well, but they will last longer. Now, I've had some problems with just some of the electrical switches, so it seems it doesn't matter what fan you buy, there's going to be problems with one versus the other one. This one, I've just bought a couple of these ones, and these are more expensive. It's about $130 or $40, I believe. Let's see. No, it's actually $95, but this one has an electronic switch. So of course, you know, I'm looking at that as a potential future fail spot the electronic switch might give out, but it's a 3-speed fan, has a larger blade assembly than what we've got with the Hellas, so it does blow more air. It's still brushless motor, so it is very quiet and moves a lot of air. So this is the one I'm waiting to see how it works, how it performs over time, and hoping that it's going to give us longer lifespan with more air movement and no problems with the electric switch. So that's what we're trying now. In addition to some of the Ultimates, because I mean these ones, yeah, when you just really need airflow, you need to cool off, like especially at my nav station or anything, I need airflow in there. So I put one of these in addition to one of the brushless motors, and we'll see how they do. So something else to keep attention to, because yes, there's also a difference in power consumption. The Ultimates will draw just over 1 amp at high speed. These ones will draw a little bit less. They don't put out quite as much airflow, so it's a translation trade-off. You get more air speed or less power. You can't really have both. If you're pushing a lot of air, it's going to take a little bit of power no matter how you look at it. But of course, less resistance in the brushless motors does translate to higher efficiency, longer wear and tear, or longer lifespan due to less wear and tear. So lots to choose from, but yeah, just pick one that you feel is satisfactory for your application, and I'm sure they'll all work for you. Another thing of prime importance is, I'm sure you can well imagine, not that everybody wants to think about it, and we certainly don't want to fix them when they break, but is the toilets on the boat. And as you are aware, or may not be aware, but Sophisticated Lady has 4 toilets on board, and they are the biggest pain in my ass you could possibly imagine. If there's one thing you don't want to ever have to fix, is going to be the toilet. They never break empty, and when they break, it doesn't matter where you are, it's always a bad time, bad place. It's not a project you ever want to do. So it's very much worthwhile to pay attention to what kinds you put on the boat and what you're going to, like what your actual usage requirements are going to be. My boat, when I first bought it, Sophisticated Lady, came with all of this kind of toilet. Every single one was the manual pump. The previous owner had already converted them because he didn't want to deal with the electrics and everything. And these are all, they're very dependable, and if your electrics in the boat go down, these will always work no matter what. They are very reliable. There's very little ever goes wrong with them. The only spare parts we carry for these types of toilets are just one of the replacement pumps, some of the gasket seals inside, and that's about it. Nothing else usually goes wrong except maybe the joker valve in the back. They need to be changed out every couple of years, which is just that rubber Y valve that stops anything from siphoning back down through the pump once you've already pumped it out overboard. When we bought Sophisticated Lady, I knew we were getting into charter, And I knew that there was one thing people were not going to want to deal with when they were on a charter boat and coming down for a vacation was pumping toilets and everything. So we just decided to convert all the toilets over to electric models, as you see here. Ours are actually exactly like this one here. And this is one of the older style, but these are the ones that have the electric pump in the back and the macerator in front, and then they've got a water inlet that comes in that brings salt water in from outside the boat through here, and then that salt water is discharged through the pump into the to rinse the bowl. So this particular model here is what we had, and the problem is there's a big rubber impeller in there, and the rubber impeller is what draws the seawater in and pumps it through the bowl, and it makes so much noise and vibration. When you set one of those toilets off in the middle of the night, it's like an electric shock. It's just like, whoa, what the hell was that? They're very, very loud. That's the only problem with them. So they did come out with a new model called the Quiet Flush, and that's these ones here. You see they don't have water inlet here anymore. They just have the discharge out the back, and what they've done instead is they've converted it to an external pump, like an external water pump that draws the seawater in and then comes up to the valve here to flush out the bowl. Now I stayed with my old models, but what I did is I took the pump out of the inside of it, just left it empty and sealed off the ends. We just modified the existing ones we already had because there's really no difference between them and the new models except that they've gotten rid of the rubber impeller, hence they don't need the chamber inside for the rubber impeller or where the water's getting drawn in from. So we just sealed off the inlet and the outlet on all of the water pumps, and then I mounted some external water pumps that are much more quiet. So that made the toilet more quiet, and then we took these little whale pumps that are inline water feed pumps, and they're electrically activated as well. So they're just hooked up to the exact same switch as what the motor here is hooked up. So when this activates, the other little pump is down below the floor, hooked into the through hull that draws water in, and it activates at the exact same time, draws water in, and that pumps water into the bowl for flushing it. Makes it so much more quiet and not nearly as bad, especially in the middle of the night somebody gets up just to use the washroom. And this is actually the pumps right here that we used. Oh, sorry, it's actually a Rule pump, a little portable pump, and they're good for 500 gallons an hour, but it's just an inline pump you can hook up to a 1/2-inch hose, and it just has one power cable, that's it. So you cut off these connectors here, run it into the same switch that controls the toilet pump itself over there. That turns this pump on and off, and this is what's going to pump your water into the toilet from now on, and these things are virtually perfectly silent. You can't hear anything from them at all. So big difference. And that was a big improvement. And we just did that a little while ago, so we'll keep you posted on that, let you know how it works over time for us as well, but so far so good. So that's it for this edition. I hope you enjoyed my first product review video, but be sure and leave me a comment below and let me know what you thought. Lots more yet to come in the refit series for a sophisticated lady, so stay tuned for next editions and we'll see you next time.